Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Smullen. I'm the Executive Director of the Alumni Relations Office at NJIT. It's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the first event in our Greek Centennial Celebration. This is a live virtual Q&A with President Bloom and Andrew Christ. As a reminder to everyone, because this is a live virtual event, there may be some occasional bumps. Please bear with us if we encounter any momentary technical difficulties. To begin tonight's event, I invite the chair of the Greek Centennial Committee, past chairman of the NJIT Board of Trustees, member of the class of '72, a proud Pi Cap, and a longtime advocate for Greek life at NJIT, Mr. Stephen DePalma, to kick us off.
Thank you, Michael. And good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Please allow me to give you a little bit of my background. I'm a civil engineer, having graduated from NCE 50 years ago in 1972. Professionally, I was CEO of a multidiscipline consulting engineering firm of approximately 1,300 employees spanning the United States. As Michael mentioned, I'm a proud member of Pi Kappa Phi, having served in many local, regional, and national positions, including national president of Pi Kappa Phi. I've also had the honor of serving as a member of the NJIT Board of Overseers from the late 1980s through 2003. And in 2003, I was appointed to the NJIT Board of Trustees by the then Governor McGreevey, and was reappointed thereafter to the Board of Trustees by each successive governor. Commencing in 2013, my fellow trustees elected me chair of the board every year for 8 consecutive years until my retirement in 2020. Certainly being the NJIT Board of Trustees chair was indeed a great honor for me. I tell you about my background, certainly not to be boastful, but to help you understand that it was my fraternity, Pi Kappa Phi volunteer and alumni advisor connection that caused me to get involved with higher education and would eventually, in my mind, come full circle and intersect with the only reason fraternities and sororities exist. And that is to support higher education. And in my particular case, this blossomed into a lifelong commitment to both NJIT and Greek life. I know I'm not unique, and that all of you have your own stories of how your own Greek experience shaped your life, from getting a job to perhaps meeting your wife, to the lifelong bonds of intimate friendships, and helping you to be the person that you are today. Many of us got our first taste at project management, public speaking, and leadership at our beloved fraternity or sorority. Our Greek life brothers and sisters allowed us to advance those skills in a nurturing and accepting environment, although sometimes it could feel judgmental. But it was always forthright, earnest, and with great intentions. Our Greek experience helped shape the men and women we are today. Today's Greek students at NJIT are no different than we were. Many are first in family to go to college, looking to learn the skills of technical know-how, perseverance, and good citizenship, while hoping for a chance at upward mobility and the American dream. But some things never change, and that is the need for human connection and networking. Greek life provides these personal interaction skills that cannot be obtained in the classroom. When we were undergrads, we thought the competition was the other Greek house down the street. How wrong was that thought process? When Greek life flourishes and prospers, it is like a rising tide. and all of our individual chapters rise, improve, grow, and prosper. I urge each and every one of you to get involved and support your local chapter and Greek life at NJIT. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. When I first met Joel Bloom in the late 1980s, he came to NJIT after having served as Assistant Commissioner of Education under Governor Kane. One of the first projects we worked on together was the development of a relationship statement between the university and NJIT's Greek chapters. There was certainly lots of suspicion, as this was actually the first time any formal relationship had been attempted between the Greeks and NJIT. But Joel, in his own way, overcame that apprehension that the Greeks had. I got to know Joel as a caring and trustworthy individual who had a very practical way of doing business. And over the years, our relationship grew, and I was very pleased that he became the 8th president of NJIT. Over the last 10 years, the university has exploded in stature, recognition, and size under the leadership of Dr. Bloom. I'm also proud to call him my brother, having witnessed his initiation into Pi Kappa Phi several years ago. It gives me great pride to welcome our president, Joel Bloom.
Thank you, brother Steve DePalma. And let me also, in reflection, talk about how we exploded in the 10, now 11 years. Steve was chair of the Board of Trustees, as you heard, during 9 of those years. And without his leadership of the board, we would not have had either the scope of growth or the speed of growth. Steve brought his project management expertise, his knowledge about real estate development, his expertise in buildings, and led the board and brought the board together, reaching very often consensus where it didn't necessarily start that way. As we talked about spending, and we did, $500 million on construction, adding significant square footage to the campus. And as Steve would say, well before I became president and he became chair, the rate of expense on capital repair and replacement was ridiculous. As a civil engineer, he knew the equations well, and we were probably spending $2, $3, $4 million a year on our physical plant. And the physical plant looked like we were spending that little amount of money. With his leadership and Andrew's execution, today we spend 14 to 15 million, and some years more, on the capital repair and replacement of our campus. I know Andrew's going to show you some of that work. But Steve, as we've said often before to each other, thank you, well done, and we did it with God's speed. So always a friend, always a brother. Thank you, Steve DePalma. Let me just remark on a couple things and then finish with some comments about Greek life and possibly a little bit of our future, which I know we'll also cover in the Q&A. First, allow me to welcome all of you to our 100-year anniversary of National Greek Life Affiliation. I often realize the strength, the mission, and what Greek life did for so many of our students over the decades. And some of the people, in addition to Steve, that helped us do it, and some of the brothers who were here and sisters this evening, let me just acknowledge a couple of folks who've done amazing work, not only in their private life, but as members of the NJIT community. Allow me to start with John Seasoltz, a brother in Pi Cap, Chair Emeritus of the NJIT Board of Overseers, still involved with the Board of Overseers. And today I am telling you that the marketing that was initiated and often lectured to by John to me and Saul Fencer and others is now just a matter of what we do hourly, every day at NJIT. The marketing and branding of NJIT, one of the first people to strongly advocate for that was you, John Cecil. So thank you. John McCann, a Sigma Pi brother, also current member of the NJIT Board of Overseers, also somebody making sure that we stayed focused on the strong, very strong Greek organizations and his leadership in Sigma Pi. Ivars Crummins, Pi Cap brother, member of the Albert Dorman Honors College Board of Visitors, and somebody who I had spent a lot of time meeting with and learning about chemical engineering as it's done in Texas. Welcome, Ivars. Russ Fanari, Sigma Pi brother, member of the CSLA Board of Visitors, and a regular at our men's and women's basketball games. Good evening, Russ. Jim Krucher. When we were challenged, I won't get the year right, but I'm going to say it was about 4 years ago now, Jim, when we could not quite control on Thursday evenings what was happening on Martin Luther King Boulevard, on what was then Greek Row, still is partially Greek Row, as young women in particular were coming quasi-intoxicated off the train to go ahead and meet some of the outstanding, handsome, very future successful brothers at the NJIT fraternities. We had some thousands of women some evenings and others, and the neighbors were not happy. Jim, who was very involved in Greek life for decades, turned out to be part of the savior, along with Andrew and our outstanding public safety and our Dean of Students, Mary Beth Boger, who was on with us, Vice President for Student Affairs, to end that practice. And we are safer because of it, and a lot of reform, not only in our Greek organizations, but in working with the partner institutions, Montclair, Seton Hall, and others. So that problem, and Jim, you were at the forefront of it. Thank you for your leadership. Ted Casera, welcome, Ted, another person very involved in the NCE Board of Visitors, again, a brother of Pi Cap. Nick DiNiccolo, current trustee and member, brother of Pi Cap, and just an absolute all-around best guy to spend time talking with. Welcome also John Puglisi, Pi Cap, and I believe Charlie Foreman is on. I want a particular shout out to Charlie Foreman. Some of you know that there was this great divide between what was called the former or the prior or the old Alumni Association and the current administration, the administration I got to lead. Charlie was just key in making sure that was all resolved. Those alums are happy. I believe we are very happy. We invest the money together that was left to the former Alumni Association. And Charlie has just been a gentleman to work with. And just a shout out to you, please, Charlie, and all good things. Let me just make a couple comments about NJIT as I wind down my 11 years as president, 19 years as vice president and dean of the Honors College. As some of you heard me say repeatedly over the years, I've loved and continue to love every moment of having had the opportunity to work and serve and meet so many of you at NJIT. It is an amazing university. I am telling you, we have the best students in the state, probably in the nation, and I believe on the planet. And that's so many, many of you. We had you there as alums in the past. The current students, as Steve has already recited, are comparable. very often first generation. Let me talk just briefly about the incoming freshman class. For me, the incoming freshman class is part of a 30-year effort. Why? It's 29% female. When I came to NJIT, it was 17% female. The diversity was not good. We are 25% in the freshman class Hispanic. We will soon be overall a Hispanic serving institution. We are 10% African American. We are still about 90% New Jersey, particularly the 7 northern counties, but we're increasingly national and international. We had for the past fall freshman class 10,300 applications for a little over 1,400 seats. So the demand for your university, demand for the professions that so many of you went into, is just outstanding. As we have seen decline in higher ed because of declining demography birth rate across this nation, particularly in the Northeast, that's not been our experience at NJIT. And the demand for our graduates, this past year we graduated 3,000 students. Could you imagine in your time, having been at NJIT, a class graduating of 3,000 students? Vast majority of them have 3 and 4 job offers, even in the COVID climate. And again, the diversity of our graduating class. Something else I just want to brag about, again, Steve knows this well, Mr. De Palma. We should tap each other gently on the back. Our graduation rate today is 72%. 72% of those young men and women who come to NJIT, who seek these STEM degrees, are graduating from our university. As Steve knows well, particularly when we took over, it was at 57%. So you heard the size of the applicant pool. You've heard about this graduation rate. And there's so many accolades about our students, the prizes that they have won, the prizes that our faculty have won. So we are regularly a competitor among major academic research athletics. The men's baseball team was in the NCAA tournament this year. Our fencing team finished 4th in the nation. The prior year, our men's soccer team, again, the NCAA tournament. So it's just been outstanding to watch the growth and development of our campus. Just some preview. I'll talk very briefly then about Greek life, and I know they want to get the questions answered, and I will introduce an outstanding colleague of mine, Andrew. You may have read 6 universities from New Jersey, 4 with the blessing of the governor, competed for something called Build Back Better Regional Coalition. We have an opportunity to win a $100 million grant. I'll talk about the details in a moment, and to bring matching money of $100 million, not ours. There were 527 institutional, very often big partnerships that submitted phase 1 applications. We did. We submitted phase 1 with the city of Newark to create a smart port Newark. Of those 527, not Princeton, not Rutgers, not Stevens, not Rowan, not Stockton, NJIT was the only winner from that group. So we are now representing the state in this competition. Phase 2 will be submitted on around March 15th. We were told of the 60 winners of phase 1, we got a $500,000 planning grant. We could be one of the 20 or 30 out of 60 that wins. This will transform the Port Newark, notwithstanding the news you may have heard about a fire. It wasn't at the port, it was neighboring the port. And this will create jobs and help supply this solve the supply chain issues. Port Newark is owned by the city of Newark, very atypical. Ports, as I've learned, represent 27% of the GDP in our country. So that's a biggie. Global NJIT, we are looking at a branch campus, which should open a year from this coming September at NJIT. Today, our Board of Trustees, we have 2 vacancies. I think I'm right. I think it's 9, maybe 10. Our NJIT alums are honorary. That's very, very important. I think NJIT is at its best when it's led by its alums, and again, had the opportunity to do that with Steve. Let me talk about Greek life just very briefly, and I know we're going to have some Q&A on it. Today we have about 30 Greek organizations, 18 men, 8 women, 4 are co-ed. What I particularly like is that the GPA, the combined average GPA for fraternities and sororities at NJIT is 3.27. That's about 500 students, of course, in our Greek organizations. We do have an opportunity to grow. I think the Greek Village, as we planned it, quite hasn't gotten to the point in time where we need it to be, but we'll talk possibly in the Q&A about how we can continue to create, I believe, ownership in the Greek Village. So let me stop at this point and tell you it has been an absolute pleasure. I will be around. I do have emeritus status for 2 years. I will be happy to talk about our incoming president. I've spent some time with him, mostly on the phone. But you can't do what we did without the leadership of our Board of Trustees, which I've acknowledged, and the team that came together to do this. And we have a team of superstars. And I'm going to introduce Andrew Christ, who's an alum, Sigma Pi brother, who's just been one of those superstars. There isn't a project that we've put in front of Andrew. It's moving $16, $17 million through the budget annually, through the jobs, to continue to improve and beautify and make the campus a real high-tech campus. The new buildings that went up, what the campus looks like today. Some of you may remember, and I'll stop on this note, Princeton Review used to write about our campus as the ugliest campus among the 387 that made it annually into Princeton Review. And it was based on our students' feedback. That was based on what people who were on that campus thought at the time. I have not heard that now for this past decade whatsoever. Every day, the public safety, the quality of our campus life is on the shoulders of Andrew Christ, and he has carried it with grace and unbelievable, excellent outcomes. So Andrew, look forward to your slide presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bloom. I appreciate that terrific introduction. And I also appreciate your vision and the support you've given me for nearly 8 years. Can you believe it's nearly 8 years, Joel, that we've been together? In addition, I must convey my appreciation to Mr. De Palma for his tireless advocacy for the renewal and expansion of the NJIT campus and his advocacy for Greek life at NJIT. He's helped us achieve so much during his tenure as chair of the Board of Trustees, and he's become a terrific friend. So thank you, Mr. De Palma. So tonight I'll be sharing the transformation of our campus, talking a little bit about some of the projects that we worked on and the outcomes of those projects. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this in the context of Dr. Bloom's tenure as NJIT's president. I think as Mr. De Palma said, you've seen the transformation in so many aspects. I had the pleasure of implementing the physical transformation that was led by Dr. Bloom. So it's been terrific, but there were also 2 key Greek alums that helped me along the way. and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about them. Todd Miller, our Assistant Vice President for Campus Planning, Design, and Construction, and a member of the Theta Chi fraternity. And Alexandra Carreras, our Project Manager in Campus Planning, Design, and Construction, and a member of the Lambda Theta Alpha sorority. So 2 incredible team members. As Joel said, it takes a team, and they have been a huge part of the success of this transformation. So where did we start? We started with a facilities master plan back in 2008 that got updated based on the incredibly successful 2020 Vision Strategic Plan of NJIT. We moved through a shared governance process. And what does that mean? It's talking with the senates, the university senate, which has representation across all aspects of the campus, the faculty senate, which allows the voice of the faculty to be heard, and the student senate, the voice of the students to let us know what's important to them. And it helped us shape a new facilities master plan that was approved by the Board of Trustees in 2018. And what was a bit different about this facilities master plan than what we had seen in the past, and this again was based on the advocacy of Mr. De Palma and Dr. Bloom. We looked at it in 2 ways: not only the need for expansion, but also the renewal and replacement of the existing facilities. And when I came back to NJIT in my current role in 2014, many of the spaces that we all were educated in looked exactly the same as they had for me in the late 80s and early 90s. And that was, a bit of a disappointment, but it was also a challenge. So we created this new master plan, and we built it on the NJIT 2025 plan. And we'll be looking at how the new vision of our new president, Dr. Lim, will help inform our development in the future. So as we implemented, these are the results. Dr. Bloom mentioned a little bit of it: $504 million, nearly over $500 million spent on your alma mater over the past decade under Dr. Bloom's leadership, nearly 1 million square feet of space. And I'll get into a lot of the details, but these funds came from various sources. It came from donors. It came from the NJIT budget. It came from our own bonding capacity, which relies on the student tuition dollars and indirect cost recovery from our research to pay the bills. But it also came from the state of New Jersey. For the first time in decades, they provided us with a public bond act, which helped to fund several of the projects that I'll go through tonight. So the first project is the Albert Dorman Honors College, part of the Warren Street Village, which was a component of the NJIT Campus Gateway Redevelopment Plan. The Albert Dorman Honors College, Dr. Bloom, the founding dean of that honors college, is celebrating its 25th year. And this is the residential component of that, a 6-story co-ed building that we completed back in 2013. A semi-suite style residential facility with beds for 360 freshmen and upperclassmen. The Greek Village, not necessarily exactly where we want it to be as far as occupancy over the years, but still providing a tremendous opportunity for the future. 5 buildings, 10 units, also completed back in 2013, has the capacity for 240 students, and it was the culmination of the initial phase of the NJIT Campus Gateway Redevelopment Plan, which I'll talk a little bit about more toward the end of the presentation. Next up, we all experienced this during our time at NJIT, the challenges for parking. The last thing we wanted to do was spend a lot of money on parking, but we can't get people out of their cars, can't get them using public transportation. So we built this new parking deck, which was completed back in 2016. It cost the university about $22 million, so a very comfortable cost per space for the 980 spaces that encompass this project, including a small surface lot adjacent to our VentureLink facility. So it did help alleviate the parking challenges, but as Dr. Bloom likes to mention, for about 10 minutes. We thought we would have about 200 additional spaces in this facility, but it's one of those circumstances where if you build it, they will come, and they came. So we're already a little bit stressed for parking only a few years after construction. I would say that the crown jewel of the NJIT campus, and something that many of you experienced in a very different way during your tenure at NJIT, is the Central King building. We looked at this 1911 former Newark Public High School, which was in horrendous condition when we acquired it. But through that Higher Education Bond Act, the Building Our Future Bond Act, it was the single largest funded project of the $1 billion program, at about $99 million from the state. We contributed about another 18 or so million dollars from NJIT, and transitioned this building from a high school to a college building. Very different. College building, you want people to stay, you want people to interact, you want people to collaborate. In a high school building, it's about moving people from classroom to classroom to classroom as quickly as possible. So as you can see on the photos on the right, creating spaces that students can just be, they can sit, they can study, they can interact. And it was our very first LEED facility, LEED Gold. It actually achieved LEED Gold twice, in 2015 and 2017. Another building that was part of that Building Our Future Bond Act is the Life Sciences and Engineering Center. In addition to the Otto York Center, it's actually physically connected. And in the top right photo, you can actually see the wall of the Otto York Center within the new addition. But with the help of the trustees and the state of New Jersey, we were able to build this 24,000 square foot predominantly research facility that allowed us to bring biology and engineering professors together in the same laboratory spaces to allow for that collaboration amongst the life sciences and engineering. And on the 4th floor, we have a facility that's a clean room facility in cell therapies through the New Jersey Innovation Institute. They have a startup company there named Biocentric, which has really put NJIT in the map as a cell and gene therapy in the forefront of those industries. So the Wellness and Events Center, many of you, I think Mr. De Palma told me once that the old facility, the Fleischer Athletic Center, was built about the time that he started at NJIT. And it became, over time, what I would consider a bad high school gym, and we needed an upgrade. We have Division I athletics, but more importantly, we needed a place to convene our campus. We needed a place for convocation. We needed a place for events. We needed a place for professional conferences, and that's what the Wellness and Event Center has provided us. It's given us the opportunity to encourage our students to be more fit, through the obvious wellness facilities, the fitness centers within the space, but also an opportunity to host things that we never had the opportunity to host in the past on the NJIT campus. And of course, it is a preeminent location for our Division I athletics program, one of the best facilities in our conference by far. Talking about some of the capital renewal and replacement, this again was a project that got about $20 million from the state of New Jersey to help. But this is Faculty Memorial Hall. Many of us had many of our classes in this facility, and it was tired. It needed a complete upgrade. So you can see what we did on the outside of the building as make sure that the bones of the building were right. Reset the clock on this facility so that it would last another 50 years for NJIT. New windows, new roof, new HVAC systems. We didn't have the room inside the existing facility for the HVAC ductwork. So with the help of our Hillier College of Architecture and Design faculty, we came up with the idea of making the ducts prominent on the building and creating these structures on the outside. And then you can see the interior, some of the facilities. This is the Longo Power Lab, which provides teaching space for our electrical engineering students. A tremendous asset now to the university. Makerspace, really providing NJIT with a differentiator. The experiential learning opportunities that the Makerspace provides for our engineering, architecture, students is unmatched. This is not just a makerspace of small 3D printers. This is industrial grade. Many of you might remember this space as the factory of the future in the information technology building, or Infotech. Now the Guttenberg Information Technology Center is host to Makerspace, and you can see on the bottom right a recently added addition where we enclosed a courtyard between the Mechanical Engineering Center and GITC to add even more space for the Makerspace, a tremendously successful facility for NJIT, and again, another facility that was helped along by a contribution from the state of New Jersey. The Microfabrication Innovation Center, this was the renovation of an existing facility that used to do work on microchips. Now it is more about lab on a chip, looking at the biomedical engineering component and educational opportunities here. And it became a core facility used by multiple faculty in multiple disciplines to prove out their own research. So another assisted by, thanks to the lobbying efforts of Dr. Bloom, assisted by several years of supplemental appropriations to NJIT for capital projects. And then here are some of the things that you'll all remember. On the bottom left there is Tiernan Lecture Hall #1. When I came back in, I had flashbacks of Chem 115 class in Tiernan Lecture Hall 1, because it looked exactly as it did the day I graduated from NJIT, actually the day I walked on campus for the first time. And on the right, you can see the transformed lecture hall space, which it provides a real opportunity for high-tech learning for our students with the appropriate audiovisual technology, giving a comfortable environment. Yet another one of those lecture halls that was transformed. This is Weston Lecture Hall. On the left, you see the before, and this is the before of the after. For many of us, that lecture hall was one gigantic space for things like differential equations and courses of that nature. But now it's actually two lecture halls, Weston 1 and 2. And on the right side, you can see what that transformed space is. And it's now been renamed the Alumni Lecture Hall for the Hillier College of Architecture and Design. Back to Guttenberg Information Technology Center, this is Lecture Hall 1400. This is another space that we renovated very recently, providing state-of-the-art facilities for our students. And many of these facilities were integral in our ability to host classes during the pandemic, which we'll talk a little bit about during the Q&A. Some additional collaborative spaces, so important to the education of today, that we completed recently in the Guttenberg Information Technology Center, which was a building that was brand new during my time at NJIT, but again, became tired and needed renovation. Cullimore Lecture Hall 1. I got a good response when I put this on LinkedIn, some of the photographs that we have here of the new Cullimore Lecture Hall #1. Again, a facility that was tired and just needed to be updated, and a tremendous job by our architectural partners on this project and our construction team. What's next for NJIT? We talked about what has been, but what's next is a new residence hall. This is a public-private partnership with a company called Rise Realty out of Valdosta, Georgia. They are the developer with Terminal Construction as the general contractor, building 548 beds of apartment-style living for the NJIT students. No more just 2 rooms feeding into a shared bathroom, or as many of us experienced in Redwood Hall, 2 beds in a room where you had to go down the hall to the shower. This will be an apartment style with a living room. It will have a kitchen, so students don't necessarily have to take the meal plan, and they're able to reduce their cost of attendance by working or living in a facility like this. Outdoor terrace, which will have fire pits, an outdoor kitchen, some field turf on the roof of the 70 parking spaces, which will help alleviate a little bit of that stress, but a facility that's long overdue for NJIT. And you can see here on this slide a picture of that terrace, which will allow some outdoor recreational opportunities for our students, and also an opportunity to host events. What else is next? Hopefully some additional property acquisition. This is a piece of land that's owned by the University Heights Science and Technology Park, which is an aggregation of all the colleges and universities in the area. And so we're hopeful that soon NJIT will become the fee simple owner of this piece of land, and will likely look to another public-private partnership to develop this into a high-tech research facility, which is space that we desperately need on our campus to expand our research endeavors, but also some space that perhaps could allow us to get some of the administrative offices out of the prime academic real estate on our campus and into more inexpensive space built more for an office building. So again, more to come. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the NJIT Campus Gateway redevelopment plan, a plan that all of the Greeks are very familiar with, the 5 components that began with the Greek Village, the University Park, St. Michael's Medical Center, MLK Gateway. We were designated as the master redeveloper back in 2008, reaffirmed that designation last December of 2020. By the City Council of Newark. So still on NJIT's radar, and we're working hard to try and complete a couple of phases of that. The first part of the implementation has been the acquisition of the Muller's florist facility, the former Teak Fraternity House at 317 MLK. And now COVID has interrupted our plans for a short period of time for future development, but in the interim, we constructed a temporary park, which certainly provides a different look and feel as you approach the NJIT campus from the north on MLK or from the east on Central Avenue. A project that's been a challenge to get started and get built is the MLK Gateway, or the 240 MLK project. It's property that NJIT owns that's north of the campus, directly across the street from the Theta Chi Firehouse. We've been partnering with the PRC group for several years, trying to get these 121 rental apartments, which will be 99 market rate, 22 affordable. We'll have a little component of retail, hopefully a little coffee shop or bodega or something like that on the corner. It's been a challenge to get through the historic preservation approvals for this project and build the capital stack. We're negotiating with the city of Newark right now. Also, we'll be applying for the Aspire grant through the NJEDA. So we're hopeful that we'll have groundbreaking of this new facility in the fall of 2022 with anticipated completion by 2024. The developer did promise that they would have a groundbreaking before Dr. Bloom retired. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. And finally, the St. Michael's Medical Center, the historic buildings were sold to a development entity, Community Asset Preservation Corporation. They've been renovating these buildings and done a tremendous job in really restoring the beauty of what was once there in these old hospital buildings. I think there might be at least one alum that might have been born in this hospital. Dr. Bloom might have mentioned his name a little earlier tonight. But there'll be a nonprofit organization, Glassroots. They'll be in the garden or basement level of the building with a new entrance. It's on the east side. The first floor will be commercial office space, and then the second through fourth floors will be what they call co-living, very popular in Brooklyn. Small kind of micro apartments that are shared by multiple people will give an opportunity for the residents of St. Michael's Medical Center to have a place to live, but also could be a good place for some of our graduate students and or incoming faculty as they get settled in. So that is the transformation of your alma mater. I hope you'll all come back and see us for a visit. I would be happy to provide tours as groups to the respective fraternal organizations. And with that, I will turn the program back to my colleague, Mike Smullen.
Andrew, thank you so much for that really tremendous presentation. It's always thrilling to see the kind of transformation the campus has gone through. I want to remind all of our audience to please make sure that you are typing in your name, your class year, and your Greek org. We're about to get into the Q&A, but before we do that, I wanted to briefly recognize the organizations that are represented here tonight and describe the nature of our centennial celebration this year. So briefly, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Alpha Kappa Psi, Alpha Sigma Tau, Delta Epsilon Psi, Iota Kappa Phi, Kappa Xi Kappa, Lambda Tau Omega, Lambda Theta Alpha, Phi Sigma Kappa, Pi Kappa Phi, Pi Kappa Phi again, Sigma Pi, Sigma Psi Kappa, Tau Delta Phi, Tau Kappa Epsilon, and Theta Chi. It is a great group out there tonight. If I have missed any of them, please make sure you put it in the chat. Let me explain what we're doing here tonight. So we have national and local Greek life that's been part of NJIT's DNA since the 1920s, and at least one organization that was around since the beginning of the Newark Technical School. Greek life has produced some of the finest graduates to walk the halls of NJIT. Among our ranks, Greek can count 1 astronaut, 2 astrophysicists who worked on the space launch at NASA, 1 regional head of FEMA, 6 colonels, 2 generals, 17 CEOs of major corporations, collectively worth hundreds of billions of dollars, at least 400 patents and probably a lot more, dozens of inventors, and so many other leaders, it's hard to count. In short, we can safely and correctly say that the last century of NJIT's existence, in fact, our country as a whole, has been guided and influenced by Greek alumni of NJIT. That's not an exaggeration. Our celebration this year is not just a celebration of organizations as they are today. It's a celebration of the entire Greek experience. All the organizations that started on their own, some who have joined national organizations, and others that are as fiercely independent as the day they were founded. Some groups were founded for veterans, some groups were founded for ethnicities, but there's a universal rule that draws everyone together: character, dedication, leadership, and a lifelong connection with brothers and sisters that cannot be replicated, cannot be replaced. It can only be respected and treasured. Our Greek life represents the very nature of our world. Greek houses reflected the changing nature of our home city, Newark. Greek public service projects reflect the ever-increasing focus on supporting our community. Greeks are, I love to say, wildly overrepresented in the number of alumni leaders at all levels of the university because of this commitment to developing more than just the college experience, but growing and strengthening character as well. Tonight, we're celebrating more than just a historical milestone. We're celebrating tradition. We're celebrating the very Greek organizations that have made NJIT the extraordinary university that it is today. Greeks made Newark Technical School what it was. Greeks made NCE what it was, and Greeks made NJIT what it was and what it is. And with our Greek Centennial Celebration this year, we recognize that Greeks, yet again, will be the leaders of the future. I'll talk a little bit more about the Centennial at the conclusion of this event, but for now, I would like to welcome back Stephen DePalma, Dr. Bloom, and Andrew to the screen. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Now we're going to go ahead and get started in the question and answer part of our event this evening. I would like to ask everyone who's watching to please put your questions in the chat. As a reminder to everyone, we are going to take questions in the order in which they were submitted. If I see multiple questions that are all touching on the same thing, I will moderate those live questions. We are going to be answering questions that were previously submitted as well. Those questions will be posed by Mr. DePalma, who is my co-moderator for this evening. When you do ask a question in the chat, please make sure again to put your name, the Greek org that you represent, and to whom you are directing your question. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with our Q&A. On to you, Mr. DePalma.
Thank you, Michael. So my fellow brothers and sisters who are watching, let me suggest that you get your most favorite beverage, sit back, relax, toast 100 years of Greek life at NJIT as we embark on the question and answer period of our program. Hear, hear. The first question is for Dr. Bloom. Joel, Greek alumni are incredibly proud of their organizations. How can we strengthen the connection with NJIT?
And Dr. Bloom, you may wish to unmute.
Thank you. Great question, Steve. And let me also, we have yet to thank and acknowledge Mike Smullen and his colleagues for putting this event together. First of all, more events like this. How do we network? How do we collaborate? How do we share the knowledge and expertise to keep Greek life alive, well, and continue to lead the way? When I came to NJIT in 1990, there was very little campus life. I must tell you, it was very flat, it was very boring, and the only thing we had that was of significance, in my opinion, was Greek life. So I was immediately attracted to it, since that was one of my areas of responsibility, the quality of campus life. So Greek life has led the way. We should have a conversation about how do we continue to see Greek life lead the way in campus life at NJIT. I think that's a number one topic. Keep Greek life on the agenda for our campus community, for our board of trustees, for the leadership. Invite faculty into Greek organization. The bigger the Greek organizations, the more engagement of the stakeholders of our community. I think the more relevant and the more important Greek life can and will be. So we've led the way, and we should continue to do that. Very often, in particular, it's the career networking, it's the programming. But again, we need to be more open and more sharing. I think you, Steve, you said it earlier, it's not about competing within Greek organizations. It's how do we partner across Greek organizations to prove the value of Greek life. I can't help it again. I always go back to the academics of who our Greek students are, how well they do, how well they help one another, how they're organized. And of course, you said it earlier as well, so let me emphasize this. We do not have enough Greek alumni involved in their Greek organizations. Pi Cap, Sigma Pi are leaders in doing it, So we need to use you as a model. You may need to do some education with some of your colleagues on this, and make a intentional and concerted effort to continue to build Greek life, the university partnering with Greek life. I think again, leading the way as you've done for these many years is the way we continue to build that and strengthen that connection.
Thank you, Joel. That was very insightful. Joel, again, many colleges and universities, particularly in the Northeast, seem to be restricting or banning fraternities and sororities from their campus. How can we ensure that NJIT continues to support Greek life on our campus?
I could give you a one-word answer: excellence. What we have in our Greek organizations are excellence in how they do community service, particularly in and around Newark, how they are respected and well regarded by the neighbors. That's critically important. Andrew and I can tell you the many, many evenings and weekends we spent in time with our neighbors to make sure they understood and appreciate Greek life, and Greek life understood who their neighbors were. There were periods where that did not go too well. I must say, in the last dozen, maybe even 15 years, we have not seen the conflict we had between the neighbors. This is an urban setting. These are not homes, even though many of them are in the village today. These are not homes that exist unto themselves on large acreage of real estate. We are cheek by jowl with our neighbors, whether it's Society Hill or it was other James Street. This is important that we continue to work in our neighborhoods, make friends with our neighbors, do the community service that we do, excel in who we are academically, and you can never, ever, ever market and brand enough for Greek life at NJIT. So and make sure every time I think about NJIT, maybe it's what I did or do there now, It's think about the Board of Trustees. Steve, you kept Greek life in the forefront, even when we had difficult times as a trustee. We have trustees who are Greeks on the today. Again, very, very important. So I think it's a no-brainer. But yeah, there are times when scarce resources are just that, they're scarce. And how do we ensure that we continue to build Greek life? There's a document, Steve, that you know we've worked on and others. It's been a product of by Mary Beth Boger and her colleagues, which we'll share more broadly. And I think there are some key tactics and strategies in that document. And let me remind all of us, Andrew brought up, in the 2025 strategic plan, our new strategic plan got stalled a bit because of COVID. We talk about in that plan that there is a strengthening of Greek life on our campus. It's in the NJIT 2020 strategic plan, building on a strong foundation, the enhancement of Greek life, Greek organizations. So I think it's there. It's up for us to implement.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more in your one-word answer that if the Greek organizations continue to be excellent in academics, in their events, in their character, and their leadership, in their skills, and what they add to the NJIT community, we will be around for another century. I feel very confident, but it's all about excellence and taking ownership over these organizations. My next question is for Andrew and Joel. Certainly, COVID has been a most challenging time for NJIT at all levels. The university has done an outstanding job managing the pandemic, keeping everyone safe, while also delivering quality education. Do you anticipate that any of the COVID-related changes will continue in the future, post-COVID, affecting our classrooms and our living spaces on campus?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Steve. You know, it's hard to believe that we're coming up on 2 years in March when NJIT canceled classes for a couple of days and then moved virtually for the balance of the spring of 2020 semester. You know, challenging times. I had a lot more hair and it was a lot less gray before the pandemic. Certainly, there are lessons learned that we've been implementing and learning all along for these past 2 years. Things around, you know, custodial operations, ventilation, spacing of things, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all of those will be things that will need to be considered as we move forward into the future. But I think first and foremost, what the pandemic has done, if there's a positive that has come out of that, that is our transition to what we call NJIT Global. Was accelerated, and that is understanding that we can truly learn remotely for a good portion of our curriculum, not everything, and Dr. Bloom will touch on a couple of the items there, and it's not for everyone, but we certainly know that we have the technology, we have the facilities, and we have the faculty that are willing to do the work to create the opportunity for students all over the globe to get an NJIT degree. Dr. Bloom mentioned earlier the potential for a branch campus in Egypt, in Cairo, that will be the first physical presence outside the United States for NJIT. But much of that teaching will likely happen from the Newark campus, providing that opportunity for students to take and be taught by the best and brightest of our faculty here at NJIT. So I think that is really the biggest component that will continue to be the legacy of a very, very bad circumstance for the nation and the world.
So just to possibly put a little exclamation mark on how transformative it was, of course, shocking, saddening. And by the way, not shocking and saddening, I forgot to also acknowledge Heidi Young, Alpha Sigma Tau sister, and a member of our Greek alumni board. Thank you, Heidi, for joining us. But we were, I must tell you, I talked a little bit before about Andrew, and let me talk a little bit about his key partner in helping us to stay a university from March 2020 to today, because we're still, while we came back to campus this fall, campus was packed, couldn't get students to go home. It was the busiest time in my 32 years there on our campus. Yes, we have a larger enrollment. We have our largest enrollment ever, but still students just wanted to be together. They wanted to help one another. They wanted to help us. They stayed masked. The protocols, you couldn't come to campus. Thank you again to Andrew and Fadi Deek, who were key in getting the academics ready, but getting the protocols implemented. We had very few cases of infection on our campus when we never really closed. We had a couple hundred students that stayed on our campus. There were about 50 Italian students, Steve, that were there from Palma that couldn't go home. They stayed through that entire summer of 2020. Some of them finally went home fall of 2020. So it was a major, major challenge. I think we met the challenge. We showed the backbone and the strength of the university, and as we came together as a community, some of us, everyone on that campus had to give back. We ended the FY20 budget in a $15 million deficit, and we opened the FY21 budget with a $36 million deficit. So the idea of how do we continue, and that was just about every person on our campus gave back financially, vacation days. But here's some of the downside. We cannot replace, based on what we do in STEM, virtual learning 100% of the time. Labs are critical to what we do. Even if we open virtually, as we did for these past 2 weeks being the semester, we kept our labs open so students can come to campus, and they were on campus for labs. We also saw a learning lag. The sophomores today are last year's freshmen. They're not quite prepared as well as the years before. This year's freshman is not quite as well prepared as years before. We have, I think, set aside several millions of dollars for additional tutoring and mentors so that we can get these 2 incoming classes. And we are in 2 classes that are already there. We have more incoming. They've just missed too much instruction in the high schools. So this is a challenge for this university. And again, we're spending millions to help these young men and women graduate from our institution to maintain that record graduation rate. So please stay tuned. Please continue to help. And we are going to struggle to get the next 3 or 4 classes graduated from NJIT and use every tool we have in the toolbox. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Staying on the theme of health and safety in mind, this next question comes from one of our house managers in the Greek Village, and it's directed to Andrew. Is it possible to establish and share a schedule of Greek Village maintenance, scheduled maintenance such as HVAC, filter cleaning, window cleaning, annual inspections, and so on? Do it on a weekly, monthly, or an annual calendar basis. Andrew?
Thanks, Steve. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that NJIT has become in the last 5 or so years is more of a proactive maintenance organization. It's no longer about reactive maintenance. So because of that, we have preventive maintenance work orders in our systems that are generated on a regular basis. So whether it be monthly, weekly, every 6 months, annually, et cetera. So we certainly can provide the information. We could create what I would call a service level agreement, where NJIT outlines to the Greek organizations that either own or lease a building in the Greek village. So they know, they have an expectation that these things are happening for them on a regular basis. Certainly that can be provided. That's an easy question to be able to provide an answer for, and give some assurance to the house manager that asked that question.
Thank you. That'd be great. Hopefully you can prepare that schedule and share it with Dean Boger and get it distributed to all the Greek Village houses that are owned or fully leased.
Will do.
Thank you. We have a question from our audience also for Andrew. Andrew, you're getting popular. Michael, would you like to pick up on that question?
Happy to. This question comes from Rocco Ricciardi. Besides retail, what are some of the other major developments in the next few years that are involved in the MLK Gateway projects?
So that's a great question. The MLK Gateway that I talked about with the 240 MLK project being the first component is really just the beginning for that area. The challenge is we need the other landowners in the area to participate with us. So currently the St. Michael's Medical Center owns the large parking lot that's behind and around the Theta Chi House and the other buildings that are along MLK. And they haven't been as willing as they had in the past to really participate in the redevelopment of those spaces. But we're hopeful that we can get them to the table once we show them how transformative it can be once the 240 project is underway, and they can really see the value in that. And they are a for-profit company now, so perhaps they'll want to develop it themselves with our partnership. But we did have very recently, last semester, we had the incredibly talented students in our Hillier College of Architecture and Design worked with me on a studio to understand what could be constructed right along the MLK corridor on the west side of the street. So from the firehouse all the way to the corner where the old bodega stood, and what types of uses could be incorporated into just one lot back off of MLK, which will do what was intended for the gateway, and that is to create that corridor, that vibrant community where people are walking and shopping and spending time, and that's the intent. And whether it's with the PRC group or some other development entity, we intend to continue to pursue that and make sure that it happens as intended in the redevelopment plan.
Sorry. Thank you so very much.
No worries.
Dr. Bloom, during your time at NJIT as Dean, Vice President, and President, you've been a strong advocate for Greek life and student life, and we certainly thank you for that support. On July 1st, 2022, we look forward to NJIT's new president, Dr. Teak Lim, in leading our university. Do you know his positions on student life and specifically Greek life? And how do you recommend that we should engage Dr. Lim to understand the long history and benefits of Greek life so that hopefully he can continue to support and grow Greek life?
Excellent question, Steve. So I had a very limited opportunity. I wasn't particularly involved in the search or the interviewing, but I did meet with President-elect Lim for 1 hour as the board was finalizing decisions, and he wanted to meet with me, and I just found him very, very engaging, point one. very smart, very experienced, and extremely knowledgeable about NJIT. He's did an outstanding job in preparing for the interviews. Since then, we have a 90-minute call once a week. We've done 2 of them. There is a transition planning team in place that met for the first time. There are 2 or 3 blocks of time that he'll be on campus, one in March, one in April, one in May. So I'm going to recommend, I have a lot on the schedule that he and I mutually agreed to cover. I know he's a very strong advocate for students. That was one of the things that I found particularly attractive about him in that 1-hour meeting. I cannot tell you that I've yet had a conversation with him about Greek life, but as the interim president for nearly 2 years at Arlington, UT Arlington, they do have Greek life there. It is a topic on our meeting agenda. We will brief him as to where we are with Greek life, and I'd strongly recommend that there's an event like this possibly next fall. Give the gentleman an opportunity to settle in. But I will be an advocate to him about Greek life. And one of these ensuing, we'll have about another 10 or 15 meetings yet, one-on-one, and then he's going to be coming to campus, as I mentioned. And that will be on my agenda. We'll make him aware of it. And you possibly can engage him first in a smaller group, as you are members of our community, the Greeks, and query him and talk about the future and the great contributions that Greek life and you as members of the alumni group have made to our university. I think he'll be very open to it. He's a very outgoing, engaging individual. So I strongly recommend that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joel. Thank you for putting it on your agenda with Dr. Lim, and hopefully we can put together a session for Greek leadership and Dr. Lim to meet, if not this year, sometime next year. And since I know you're, if I recall your contract, you are an advisor to the university, working at the pleasure of Dr. Lim for the next 2 years. Hopefully you can make yourself available for that meeting.
I look forward to it, Chair Emeritus De Palma.
Thank you. I believe we have another question from our audience. Michael?
We do, Steve. So this question is from Charles Marzullo. The question is, are we tracking membership in Greek organizations over the last few years? And if so, have we noticed any changes? And I'd probably put that question to Dr. Bloom and Andrew generally.
Why don't we let Andrew start? I got a trustee I'm not annoying me. I didn't mean that. I got a trustee who's keeps on sending me, we need to talk sometime. A little something got messed up today in a meeting with the trustee. Thank you. I'll be right there. Andrew, please start.
All right, I'll give it a shot, Joel. So certainly, we do track and trend and understand how Greek life is growing or contracting on campus. Obviously, COVID, again, has been a huge challenge to every organization on campus, not just the Greek organizations, but certainly trying to accommodate that. I know Dean Mary Beth Boger and her Greek life organization within the administration is working very hard to make sure that things are happening to encourage students to be part of Greek life. I know the value of the experience firsthand. My first job came from my big brother in my fraternity, and that I think that is where we have to continue to engage with students, make them understand the value proposition of the Greek organizations, and continue to to really promote that as an opportunity for a great campus experience. And I think, as Mr. De Palma said earlier, and many of the alums that are on this call today, we had a great college experience at NJIT because of our relationship with a Greek organization. So making sure that we're tracking and trending and understanding where the challenges are. I did see something in the chat a little earlier regarding local fraternities and sororities. They are important as well. It's not just about the nationals. They need to survive because they're integral organizations in the structure of Greek life. And Greek organizations also need to be more participatory in things like the Student Senate. During my tenure at NJIT, the Greek organizations, we were the Student Senate. We were the entire leadership of the Student Senate. So making sure that they are participating in those endeavors is extremely important as well. So thanks.
I'm going to say IBID. There are student senators who are Greeks. There's the data I've seen recently is about a third of them are 8 of 36. I know there's been some conversation over the years. Should there be a dedicated Greek organization leader or Greek organization student senate representative? And I certainly think I would let the students resolve that. Our students we know are very smart. Look who they've grown up to be over these years. And I'd ask that to put that issue before the student senate as compared to the administration getting into any top-down kind of mandate. And again, Andrew said it, so I'll echo that. Mary Beth Boger and her colleagues in the Office of Fraternities and Sororities are doing a very good job, particularly in programming, in helping the Greeks to continue to grow and develop. So kudos to them. Thank you.
Okay, and let me make a quick note for Chuck Summers and Rocco regarding some of your Greek Village questions. We're going to touch on those in some upcoming questions that Dr. Bloom and Andrew will cover. So what I want to do now for my next question is from Grace Hogg. What can alumni of Greek organizations do to help their brothers and sisters catch up academically? And this was specifically in reference to the challenges of COVID and the forms of education we provided.
So I will. Every Greek organization has a structure in place to help their members. Every Greek organization does, right? So first of all, be aware that you have heard, and they all know as well as I do, that the freshman class, this year's sophomore class, came to us missing a ton of education. So within your house, within your Greek organization, and we do make spaces available where there isn't a house in common areas, particularly again, as Andrew has pointed out, in the Central King building, for opportunities for mentoring and tutoring. We have a very strong tutoring and mentoring center in the Central King building. And then there ought to be a discussion. Again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, across Greek organizations. What are your best practices in helping your members, your brothers and sisters, to be prepared for our rigorous, challenging curriculum? I propose, and Mary Beth Boger knows this well, maybe we need a conversation that's more broad across the campus as we come back at the end of this month, about how do we do some catch up, and how do we do it quickly? And again, let Greek organizations help lead the way in doing it. You have more structure than clubs and other organizations as to academic preparation of your brothers and academic help for your brothers and sisters. So that could be an exemplar of how groups get organized to help tutor and mentor their fellow students.
Thank you, Joel. Joel, the next question is for you. It's a lengthy question. It's a multi-part question. And it's been crafted from several questions from both alumni and undergraduates. Tonight, we are kicking off 100 years of Greek life. This is certainly quite an accomplishment that we can all be very, very proud of. Greek life has historically provided NJIT with strong student engagement and alumni support. Greek life and Greek houses, since their inception, have also historically been permitted to operate independently within reasonable guidelines and policies while abiding by the laws of New Jersey. In fact, many would say that it is this independent experiential learning, skill development, and personal growth within Greek life and within our chapters that is the primary benefit to our student members. Recently, Residence Life has assumed the management of the Greek Village member organizations. Some of our members struggle between Res Life rules intended for dormitory transitionary occupants versus Greek life organizations that are supported and guided by our local alumni, as well as national and regional fraternal and Panhellenic councils. Greek life needs NJIT's support to help with the following primary goals. First, support Greek life membership recruitment and growth. Second, support, enhance, and help drive our membership engagement programs that are uniquely and specifically oriented to fraternity sorority organizations. And third, and probably most important, support and provide a working framework for Greek Village independent governance. Dr. Bloom, as the president who helped make the Greek Village a reality, can you, before you leave your office, help to ensure that these three goals can be implemented and sustained after you end your term? Kindly address each of those three goals individually, as well as the independent self-governing policies at the Greek Village. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those questions, and I'll attempt to answer each of them individually. Before I do that, I'm just a bit of a prop here. Let me hold this up, which you may not be able to read on the screen. This is entitled, thank you, Greek Village Building on a Strong Foundation. So this document will become public by next Monday, toward the end of this week. Again, Mary Beth Boger and I and others have been reviewing this document, making some changes to capture in part something that you've said, Steve, eloquently about. We know the purpose of Greek life is not only to build character, to build leadership, to build fraternity, sorority, to help one another, to lead one another. And there's a certain level of independence that you need to be able to do that. So you will read in this document, I'm not going to take you through all of it, not that it is that long, that we're going to recognize that there are multiple parties to the Greek Village. There's the Pi Cap House, which is owned by the Greek fraternity, and therefore they, like any house that previously was on the row, stand independent. They will belong to, as we've had in the past, a Greek a Greek organization, a Greek governing body, but it'll be the fraternity and sorority life office that will be part of that, not residence life for those that are owned. Right now, that's only one house. There are houses that we're going to start talking to, or Greek organizations that we're going to start talking to in the village, and help them figure out and we think we came up with a better solution as recently as a continuing discussion today about where right now a bed, if you will, in a residential facility on campus is, depending on which facility, but it's well over $7,000 annually, in many cases over $8,000. We think we can put together a financial program where students will have the opportunity to live 12 months out of the year, or occupy 12 months out of the year, for about $4,500 a bed, hopefully all in. It's going to require finding funding. It's going to require people signing the documents as Hvac did, as you did, Mr. De Palma. It's going to require a Greek Alumni Council as part of that Greek organization, because people have to be willing to step up and take on the debt and take some responsibility. And in some cases, the individual organization may want to go out and insure themselves against that debt. There are those opportunities to do that well. So I think we have a way to increase the lease ownership in the Greek village, and again, not governed by the residential life, but governed by a mutually agreed to fraternity sorority council. Increase lease ownership over years for paying out debt. A house is, as you know well, over $2 million. So that's the kind of debt. But again, fill up the house, 24 beds, and we believe we can then carry the annual costs, including maintenance, for about $4,500 per bed for a 12-month lease. So let me stop there, but we are going down that track specifically, and I'll go back to the specific enumerated questions that you have. How do we support Greek life membership and recruitment and growth? Again, what's different today than it was decades ago, as when Greek life first grew up, there's probably about 150 clubs at NJIT. We are a D1 athletics campus. Greek life was all of the campus life at one time, including the competitiveness of athletics. So things have changed. So the Greeks have to work harder to become this continuing, leading the way organization to give the co-curricular opportunities for more of our students. If students feel they become a member of the Greek organization, that they get the benefit of a less expensive bed, they're in a community that upholds the Greek values. They won't necessarily have to be in a meal plan within the Greek village. So there are clearly benefits that we are working on to financially reward students to become members of Greek organizations in lease-owned homes. But again, it's very dependent, as you have done, Hvac again, you've been exemplars in how you keep your alums engaged. We need those lessons taught and learned by other of the Greek organizations, the fraternities and sororities. Driving membership, we use students to recruit students at NJIT. You know this well. When we bring students to campus, as some of you may have had your children or your grandchildren come to campus for a tour, it's not led by me or any of I try to intervene occasionally if I'm walking around campus in a tour, but it's students leading those tours. It's students recruiting students to NJIT. It needs to be Greeks recruiting Greek students to their organizations. And again, we don't need to do this in a competitive way. We need to do this in sharing best practices across Greek organizations. So we're willing to do this. You'll see in this document, Mary Beth and her colleagues have carved out some annual monies per Greek organization, particularly in the village, to help them with educational programming. I don't want to cite the amount of money because I don't recall it, but it was several $100s annually that each Greek organization would have access, and again, drive their membership, use social media, which I know most of you do. The working framework, that's what's in the paper. Please, for those of you listening, again, it will be available. We'll get it out to each and every Greek organization. We'll send it to each and every person with the help of Mike Smullen, who's in this session this evening. It's called Greek Village, Building on a Strong Foundation. I think we are, Steve, before I do leave office, but I am around for a couple of years, carving out the pathway to continue ownership, which was our intent when we planned and build the Greek Village. Build membership, own a piece of that Greek Village. I think we're going to find a way. By the way, we also have an outstanding CFO. If any of you have met her or know of her, Kathy Brennan, former deputy treasurer for the state of New Jersey. I am sorry I didn't have her there for a longer period of time. She's just outstanding, and she's part of this group that is meeting and helping us to figure out how do we keep it at about $4,500 for a 12-month lease, possibly avoidance of some of the meal plan requirements, and even an incentive to go ahead and do more Greek programming through a contribution through Mary Beth's office to each Greek organization, particularly in the village. So those are some of the tactics, Steve, and I think you'll get a chance to read about more of them in this document.
Thank you so much, Joel. Obviously, this is the first I've heard of this document, but it sounds exceptionally exciting. I'm particularly pleased to hear about a lease ownership concept and a financing concept for our groups. Right now, as you all know, 5 out of the 10 units in the Greek Village are fully occupied by Greek organizations. The others are essentially overflow dorm space for various houses. I'm also pleased to hear about the thoughts, the concept of membership growth and engagement plans for our students. And I have a lot of faith in this generation, and particularly our students and our Greek students. And I think they will rise to the challenge of increasing their numbers and growth with this kind of support that you've described. And I look forward to receiving and reading the report. Thank you. Andrew, you touched upon this during your presentation, but more specifically, if you can address what is you talked a lot about the redevelopment plan on the 240 building on MLK, the structure. And actually, when I went to school, that was Tiernan Hall, just as from a historical perspective for some of the older alums and brothers and sisters on the call. But you touched upon that, and hopefully have a groundbreaking this year with PRC development. Could you spend a little bit of time talking about the larger block behind the Theta Chi house, behind the old Pi Cap house, bounded by James, Orange Street, and MLK? What is happening with that, if anything?
Sure, Steve. And yeah, for me, it was the place that I went and assembled my computer that NJIT gave me when I started as a freshman. So 240 MLK was used even later on, before it became an enterprise development center and lived its many lives. And most recently, it was featured in a the Equalizer, a television show. So we try to monetize the facilities, even those that aren't being used anymore. As far as across the street, as I mentioned earlier, the challenge has been the transition of ownership with St. Michael's Medical Center from Catholic Health, which was a not-for-profit entity that had been a partner in developing the NJIT Campus Gateway redevelopment plan, to Prime Healthcare, which is a for-profit organization that has not been as amenable to redeveloping the property that they own in that block, which is the predominance of the property. It's the large parking lot. There are a couple of other parcels along Orange Street that are owned by a local developer who does intend to redevelop those and make them something that would mimic the plan for the campus gateway. However, we still believe that there needs to be development on that streetscape. Once the 240 project is underway, we expect to be able to convince the leadership at St. Michael's that the right thing to do would be to develop that block, that streetscape along MLK, and at least that one lot deep of frontage. So the old bodega on the corner could be repurposed, reutilized, or not. It depends on what is planned there. A really good quality infill development that would incorporate potentially the old Pi Cap house and bring that development right up to the Theta Chi Firehouse. There is no intention of any redevelopment of the Theta Chi Firehouse. That is their fraternity house, and that's the intent for it to remain their fraternity house. So we want that development because we need that activity. We need the services. We need, whether it's small commercial opportunities, we need neighborhood business in that space, especially as they continue to grow. Even behind that plot, the old Baxter Terrace properties will be redeveloped into significant housing, potentially some retail, commercial opportunities there as well. So there will be a need for those dry cleaners and other type of services like that in the neighborhood, and we'd love to see it happen on the MLK corridor.
Great. Thank you so very much for that response. I'm sure our brothers at Theta Chi are very anxious about what's going on in their backyards. Michael, I understand after Joel's comments specifically regarding this plan that is shortly going to be shared, that you received some questions from our audience. Could you pick up on that, please?
Certainly. And for those who have submitted a few questions, I'm going to join together a few things that are very similar in nature. Dr. Bloom, two basic questions have come out of the comments. The first is, are the benefits that you describe in the plan applicable to non-Greek Village organizations or just those who are in the Greek Village? And also related to the Greek Village, there were a lot of expenses and costs that had previously been mentioned to the Greek groups. Are those expenses and costs changing on the basis of what you're describing here?
The program, as we're rolling it out, is for the Greek Village. We want to complete. Right now, the Greek Village is occupied somewhere around 60% by members of Greek organizations. So we want it to be the Greek Village. So the incentives that we talked about, the taking on of responsibility by Greek organizations, will happen hopefully in the village. Again, we've not done the full budgeting for the village, but right now we do not anticipate. We think, as we've talked through this opportunity, nothing else should change other than, and we will not aim for inflation as it currently exists, but you can expect some increases in the cost in operating the Greek Village, but not to support the lease option, the lease to purchase option for any other houses. So I don't expect, we are not discussing any significant changes, of course, in the Greek Village. But yes, it's only for, at this point in time, for facilities within the village.
Excellent. Thank you.
Michael, was that the only question you received from our audience?
That's correct.
Okay. Andrew, Andrew, there are rumors that NJIT is building a baseball field. Do you have any, is that true? And if so, do you have any details that are appropriate to share?
Sure. Thanks for that question. We've been hunting for a baseball field for our baseball team since about 2016, when the, as you know all too well, the Newark Bears and Eagles Stadium was sold by the county to a developer, and that developer demolished the stadium. NJIT and Rutgers Newark used to use that as our home baseball field. It was an opportunity lost. I think an unfortunate circumstance for the city of Newark and for NJIT, as we did try and acquire it at the time, but we lost out based on frankly, an insignificant amount of cash. And I know that that is something that burns Dr. Bloom to the soul, and is reminded regularly by our county executive of how we missed that opportunity. So we have been searching in Newark. Finding a 4.5 to 6.5 acre parcel of land is not easy. We looked at the Baxter Terrace property, which is controlled by the Newark Housing Authority. That particular property is not available to us at this time for a baseball field. It would be best to have it within walking distance of the campus. We've tried probably a half a dozen of other facilities to try and make it work. And right now we have what we think is the best circumstance for us, and that is a parcel in the North Ward that is adjacent to a recreation center that we hope will be able to be acquired. Again, currently owned by the Newark Housing Authority, that we will work with a development partner to construct a new baseball field for our baseball team. And of course, it could be used by our students. It could be used by our other athletic teams for practices, et cetera. But it will be built as a baseball field. This is not recreating Riverfront Stadium. That's not what this is about. This is about providing a suitable facility for our baseball team, who, as we all learned over and over and over again, if you watch the ESPN broadcasts of the NCAA tournament, we're the only team in the tournament without a home field. So certainly something that this team deserves to have. Just like our other athletic teams and our other athletic facilities are first rate, the baseball team deserves to have a first rate facility as well. And we'll do it in the most cost effective way possible so that the students don't bear the brunt of an unreasonable expectation of cost.
Thank you.
Well,
we're about to ask our last question. Let me thank you for the opportunity to moderate this. It's been fun, and thank Joel and thank Andrew. Well, the final question is, and this is a question for both of you, as Greeks. In your ideal world, what can Greek alumni do to support Greek life right now?
So Greek alumni need to get more involved in the Greek organizations. Steve, a number of the people we know on this in this call are very good at what they do professionally. And I think we, with you, need to commit to getting more Greek alumni engaged with their alma mater Greek organization. We now have some sororities that have quite several years of alums. We have heard fraternities that have decades-long engagements. It's time to seriously get organized, help one another, continue to talk to the active students about helping in the effort too. They may see alumni as something that's not relevant to them at this point in time. But if it gets them into a lease future-owned house, I think there's a lot of, but you can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And again, I think this document that I referred to earlier will help at least lay the groundwork, but we must get more Greek alums to engage with their alma mater Greek organization and to commit to trying to build a greater presence in that Greek village. I think we have the capacity, we certainly have the will, but we need to be much more intentional about doing it. So that's my singular recommendation. Thank you for the very good question.
And if I could add, or echo some of Joel's comments, that, the participation at the alumni level is important. You can see it in the fraternities that have been successful and sororities that are successful in continuing to develop membership. They have strong alumni leaders that are helping to coach and mentor the students. My experience, from the Sigma Pi side of things, is we have some terrific leaders like John McCann, Sam Jeeves, Steve Fronefeld, Russ Fernari, et cetera, that have stuck with the Sigma Pi organization for decades. And that has allowed us to be strong. And Pi Kappa Phi is another example of that, a tremendous example of what it means to continue to keep the organizations healthy. And a couple of the questions that were asked about the other houses that are along the row and, Kappa Xi Kappa on Sussex Avenue, the opportunity to continue to be a strong organization requires that the alumni get involved to ensure that the houses are kept up, that insurance is provided there, that security and safety are paramount in order for students to be able to live in these facilities. So I think it's imperative on my alumni, Greek alumni brethren and sisters to get involved and to remain involved and to continue to help and mentor the current NJIT Greek students to the success that we've all seen and achieved, and have that awesome experience and go back and have a good time together. We recently had our Thanksgiving dinner and it was terrific. And there were dozens of alums back in the house and lots of actives around. And we really enjoyed that time together. And those are the kinds of things that build that fraternal bond that lasts for a lifetime. So thank you.
Andrew, very well said. I have nothing more. Michael?
Thank you very much, sir. So I want to thank our speakers tonight. It's been a pleasure having them. President Bloom, Steve DePalma, Andrew Christ, and to those who helped support the event tonight, Jim Crutcher, Dean of Students Mary Beth Boger, and all of the other folks who helped put together this event, provide the questions. And I also want to add that this was one of the most engaged group of alumni within the comments and asking questions that I've ever seen on one of these virtual events. So I want to thank you as well for coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our Q&A. We do welcome additional questions. If there's additional questions that come through the chat, if there's other questions that you would like to pose to us, please make sure to email us at alumni@njit.edu, and we'll be happy to forward your question directly to the person to whom you direct it. This is a reminder that this is only the first of a series of Greek Centennial Celebration events. As I mentioned earlier, this is a year-long celebration of all the great things that Greek life has done, of the tremendous traditions that exist, and also looking towards the future of what Greek life can accomplish at NJIT. You'll see at the bottom of the screen the link that's going to show you how to register, the list of events, and also how to volunteer, both to plan these events and to join our Greek Alumni Board. You heard earlier in Dr. Bloom's comments that we are seeking leaders to join a comprehensive council of Greek alumni leaders. You heard Mr. Christ's comments about how alumni leadership is so important to the life of an organization, to keep it energetic, active, to recruit new students, and to celebrate what makes Greek life so great. So please visit njit.edu/Greek Centennial And you'll see all that information listed there. Finally, we're going to conclude the majority of our Greek Centennial events at Alumni Weekend. So save the date for Alumni Weekend, Friday, May 20th and Saturday, May 21st. We're going to have, I think, a really amazing celebration during that weekend. If you'd like to plan and participate events like this, if you want to join the efforts to really engage our Greek alumni and to provide that leadership, don't miss your opportunity now. That's what today is all about. Finally, as I say at the end of all of our virtual events, go Highlanders.